So let's cut right to the main point and give a huge round of applause for what our young people organized this past Friday. Please? I mean, are you kidding me? What those kids did on Friday is sermon enough for one weekend. And the main takeaway of their creative explosion of activism and the main takeaway of my sermon is the same. Climate change is happening. We have to act now. That's it. That's the main takeaway. We can all leave. But I'm going to still talk for 17 minutes anyway. Okay? I was blown away by the power of the global climate strike march. Demonstrations in 185 countries, an intergenerational mass of over 250,000 people marching in New York City alone, and a huge faith community contingent linking the demands of our young people to the spiritual imperatives of our faith traditions. It was ritual and it was action. It was theater and it was community organizing. It was apocalyptic theology, and it was hope-filled protest. And I'm especially grateful to Lila Boehm and Alan Hunter. Give them a round of applause for spearheading the participation of Judson's own energetic contingent and watching excited Judsonites walking down Broadway with our gigantic, beautiful banner that you can see over there that reads, "Defend Our Home." That will remain a highlight of my year. I myself walked in my clergy collar with a sign that read, "Jesus would be at this march," which is an admittedly bold move when you're marching with thousands of young people whose hashtag reads, "Unite Behind the Science." But my message was oddly well received. One of my favorite interactions was with a young woman, maybe 13 years old, in a camouflage jacket and Doc Martens with a sign that simply said, "Go vegan." I assume they were vegan Doc Martens. She read my sign and said, "No, Jesus wouldn't be at this march. Jesus is at this march." And it's the truth. And then she insisted on taking a selfie with me. And we agreed that Jesus would definitely be down for uniting behind the science. And since I was preparing to talk about Jesus' parable of the sower today, I had Jesus and seeds and soil and parables on my mind a lot on Friday. The perfect complement to the seeds of communal possibility I saw being planted in that crowd. The parable of the sower is my favorite of Jesus' parables. And if you don't know what a parable is, it's basically a little story that illustrates a moral or spiritual lesson, and it's often pretty simple on the surface, but really deep and complicated when you start to mine its meaning. And William Barclay called parables earthly stories with heavenly meanings. And Jesus spoke in parables a lot, just like many spiritual leaders. And across our Gospels, we've got about 33 of Jesus' parables recorded, depending on what you count and what you don't count. Many of them so well known now that they're almost cliches. The parable of the Good Samaritan, the prodigal son, the lost sheep, the mustard seed, the rich fool. You get the parabolic picture. And out of these 33 examples, the reason I love the parable of the sower most is because it's not just a plain old parable. It's working on two different levels. It's not only a parable, but it's a parable that teaches you how to read parables. And right now is a good time to get our parable reading groove back, because next month, a bunch of intrepid Judsonites are about to relaunch our adult education mystery school series, and the opening theme is going to be, ding, 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 I gave you the answer, parables. Get excited. So what better moment than the present to learn how to read parables again? And I especially think it's a perfect time to learn how to read the parable of the sower. Because what this little story has to say about the struggle between, in my opinion, climate change decriers, diverters, and deniers is absolutely earth-shaking. As a community of hope in hard times, we at Judson owe it to ourselves to mine the meaning of our sacred texts in order to get to the center of why it is so easy for some to stay stuck in climate change diversion and denial. And the parable of the sower gives us a perfect entry point. But first, I gotta talk about Greta Thunberg, okay? Greta Thunberg simultaneously reminds me and doesn't remind me of Jesus. Stay with me here. I promise I am not about to embark on idol worship. First, Greta Thunberg reminds me of Jesus because she consistently pushes praise away from herself. She refuses to be treated as a messianic figure with some secret millennial message. She's like Dorothy Day, who said, "Don't call me a saint. I don't want to be dismissed that easily." Greta doesn't want to be the center of attention. She wants climate change to be the center of attention. Like Jesus, Greta continually says, "Don't look at me. Look at what's happening around you." And all of us, whether we are her supporters or her detractors, would do well to obey her. She only wants us to listen to her for as long as it will take to convert our own despair or diversion or denial into action. And second, Greta Thunberg doesn't remind me of Jesus because she doesn't speak in complicated parables. She doesn't even really speak in poetry. Have you noticed that? She speaks in simple, fact-filled, declarative statements that leave little space for nuance. She's not trying to coyly leave it for us to excavate her message like Jesus did. She wants us to hear the words, panic, combine that panic with hope, and get to work. She's simply illustrating the difference between heaven on earth and hell on earth and telling us to make our choice. The trouble is, so many people are willfully still treating Greta Thunberg's statements and the statements of smart scientists as parables, as riddles, as complicated stories that we need to sit and contemplate and dwell on, when in actuality, the stories that Thunberg and basically any scientist worth their salt are telling actually have one simple moral. Climate change is happening. Really, panic. Then combine your panic with an appropriate amount of hope and do something. And the parable of the sower predicts how people will and won't listen to this message. If you look at the text here, and thank you for reading it so beautifully, Chelsea, you end up with three main categories of audiences. And remember, Jesus is talking to a diverse group of people here. Some are eager to hear his message, namely the most oppressed people desperate for another way. Some want to hear the message, but don't really want to change, instead opting to stay cloaked in their own comforts. And some are just so drunk on power and privilege that they are never going to let Jesus' message sink in. Three main categories, and I call them deniers, diverters, and decriers. So take a look. Here's the plot. A sower is sowing seeds, right? Clearly, seeds are a metaphor here for the gospel message. Or, if we're talking the message of climate change, seeds are the message of climate change. And those seeds fall in 3 to 4 unique places. First, you've got the seeds that fall on the path and don't even make it to any kind of soil. And this is the message that falls on ears who just can't wrap their hearts around the fact that their greed, their inhumanity, Their refusal to care for the entire earthly community is causing the deaths of people, the deaths of animals, the deaths of basically all of creation. And these folks, the deniers, just might never make it past their own myopic selfishness. And in times this dire, society at large must make a choice about these people. We need what Pope Francis calls an ecological conversion. Have you heard that term? I love it. We need an ecological conversion, and we need to evangelize with these seeds of ecological conversion to any denier we can get. But if it still doesn't take, we need to move beyond them. We need to move beyond them. We need to vote the powerful deniers out of office and move on. The house is on fire. We can't linger too long off the path. So let's get away from those deniers. Then you've got the seeds that fall on the rocky ground and get scorched by the sun, or those seeds that fall among the thorns and get strangled in the sharpness. This is the message that falls on ears who might have the heart to hear, who might be so desperate that they listen, but who also get easily distracted from the course, easily diverted from the actual imperative of what's being asked of them. And I know this is where I fall. Maybe it's where most of us fall. We're the diverters. We desperately want to spread the word, to change our lives, to repent and reorient. We share Greta's speeches on social media. We make beautiful, clever signs for our marches, but then we return to daily life and our passion gets scorched by the perceived demands of our normal existence and strangled by the fear that our little lives and individual choices don't really matter to all of the great work in the end. It's way too easy to gather, march, scream, and then go right back to what we were doing. That's not community organizing. That's not activism. That's meaningless theater. And this is from a theater person. I like theater. And then you've got the seeds that fall in the healthy soil. And oh God, I want to be healthy soil. Don't you want to be healthy soil? Don't you want to bring forth grain? I want to bring forth grain. 100-fold, 60-fold, 30-fold, 1-fold. God, I don't even care. I just want to bring forth some grain. I just desperately want to have the strength to be good, fertile soil. I want to be a decrier, not just sending impotent shouts out into the echo chamber that I don't really follow myself, but actually truly so committed that my every move, my every choice in this world is a living embodiment of decrying climate change, decrying our constant human causing of collective murder and collective suicide. And by the way, just because I've made this parable about climate change today doesn't mean that you can't apply this practice to basically every single social justice issue we're up against, or even simply any personal problem you may be up against. When it comes to something that is causing the world or yourself pain, you can either be a decrier, a diverter, or a denier. You either deny what's happening, or you divert your attention from it, or you decry that it's wrong, that it's a painful problem, that something must be done, and then you do something about it. Because everything is a parable. And yes, William Barclay was right when he said that parables are earthly stories with heavenly meanings. But I think that parables are also earthly stories with hellish meanings. The hells that we create for ourselves, the hells we create for others, and the hell we are creating of the only home we've got. And it's not complicated. The meaning is right there on the surface. It's up to us to measure at every moment how close we are to the heavenly meaning and how far we are from the hellish meaning. Are we regularly taking measure of the seeds of truth? Where are we spending our money if we can see the truth in front of us? Who are we buying things from if we can see the truth in front of us? What and who are we eating if we can see the truth in front of us? With all the truth spread out in front of us, what footprints are we leaving on this planet's most vulnerable and oppressed? Who are we trampling on our rushed way to hell? 3 main choices. Are we going to close our hearts from the seeds completely, like so many of our elected leaders? Are we going to embrace the seeds superficially, but still let them get scorched and strangled by inaction, like so many of us are doing right now? Or are we going to figure out together how to be active, fertile soil that turns those seeds into what they're supposed to become? New life. What's one more step you can take today to get a bit closer to new life? That's my question for you. It's my question for myself, and I hope it's the question that we always want to be answering when we gather here. What's one more step we can take together today to get closer to new life? When it comes to climate change action, Judson's got lots of opportunities right in front of us. Extinction Rebellion meets here, in our building. Extinction Resilience meets here, in our building. Animal Rebellion meets here, in our building. Extinction Rebellion is even getting their October Rebellion Week activities in our front yard, Washington Square Park. You cannot get any easier than this. We can't say there aren't seeds right here for us to absorb. We just need to make sure we're fertile soil for the seeds that are being sown around us. How do we measure how close we are to heaven or how close we are to hell? I think we read the parables from the most complicated to the simplest. And at the start of the service, Sarah beautifully sang an aria in German, if you didn't notice. And we didn't translate it for you, if you didn't notice. That's a parable. But I'll give you a hint. The lyrics are about measuring the space between heaven and hell. And in a moment, Charlotte is going to dance a new piece by Eileen. And there won't be any narration. That's a parable. But I'll give you a hint. Eileen told me the piece is about measuring the space between heaven and hell. Scientists, smart scientists are measuring the space between heaven and hell on earth, and they are giving us simple parables. Don't deny. Don't divert. Unite behind the science and decry. That's what Jesus would do. Act as if the house is on fire, because it is. And the Green New Deal isn't just going to magically solve everything. The house is becoming hell on earth, and we've got heavenly choices to make. This has to just be the beginning, or it will be the end. Now, Charlotte, please come up here and shut me up before I overheat. Dance a new parable for us and get us one step closer to heaven.